What drives 40 climbers to queue beneath a hanging glacier that could erase them all? Each paid $70,000 to stand on that strip of blue ice under K2's bottleneck. Above 8,000 meters, the body dies by the minute. Blood thickens, judgment fails. The death zone measures survival in oxygen, not dollars. How much does it really cost to climb the world's deadliest peaks? The arithmetic is stark. 10 mountains demand $3,000 to $100,000 per climb. Money buys logistics and illusion. It cannot buy mercy from physics. What follows is the forensic accounting of ambition, where financial investment meets nature's non-negotiable terms. 10. Mont Blanc, the corridor of death. $3,000 buys a death lottery ticket to Mont Blanc. Guides, cable cars, hut bookings across the French-Italian border. The infrastructure of accessibility. 20,000 climbers queue annually for Western Europe's highest point at 4,808 meters. The mountain appears civilized from Chamonix cafes. French alpine rescue archives tell a different story. 100 deaths per year in the Mont Blanc Massif, more than any mountain region on Earth. The killing field is the Gouter Couloir. Locals named it Le Couloir de la Mort, the corridor of death. Every sunrise triggers the same sequence. Warming rock releases house-sized boulders in volleys. The debris accelerates to highway speeds down a funnel every climber must cross. Helmets become psychological comfort against physics. Rescue helicopters orbit daily, rotors beating above fresh impact craters. At dawn, headlamps stream upward like funeral candles. By noon, some are extinguished. The arithmetic is merciless. Lower costs multiply volume, volume multiplies casualties. Mont Blanc's postcard beauty conceals meteorological violence. Winds that explode from calm to hurricane force within minutes, erasing visibility and balance together. Yet even this casualty rate pales beside mountains where altitude itself becomes the executioner. 9. Mount Kilimanjaro, the gentle killer. Reaching Africa's highest point typically costs $2,500. That fee covers park permits, equipment, and the mandatory local guide team, usually 15 to 30 porters per group carrying tents and food. For many travelers, it seems reasonable compared with the Himalayas' six-figure bills. The mountain itself appears gentle, a walk through rainforest and alpine desert, finished with sunrise above clouds. Yet behind the postcard stands a recurrent toll, 3 to 10 deaths every year, on what marketing describes as a hike. About 50,000 people attempt Kilimanjaro annually. Most ascend in less than a week, far too fast for proper acclimatization. At its 5,895-meter summit, available oxygen is less than half that at sea level. Within 3 days, many trekkers reach heights where the brain starves for air. Altitude sickness begins as headache and nausea, evolving into pulmonary or cerebral edema, the body drowning in its own fluids. Park medical logs list hundreds of evacuations per season, though most go unrecorded. Few tourists admit distress after paying for success. The mountain's economics encourage speed. Operators advertise short itineraries to cut costs and tempt clients with success certificates. The popular meringue route averages only a 45% summit rate because it races from base to crater in 5 days. Rescue teams use makeshift Kili wheelbarrows, single-wheel stretchers pushed by porters to move the sick downward. Helicopters can evacuate only below 5,000 meters. Above that, gravity and stamina replace machinery. Case histories reveal the biological trap concealed within simplicity. In 2009, a 43-year-old marathon runner died 200 meters from the top despite perfect weather. She had ignored prolonged nausea, believing fitness an antidote to physiology. The real human cost accumulates on those who carry rather than climb. Injuries among porters outnumber client deaths by a wide margin, though these losses rarely enter official data. Each client's $2,500 supports a small expedition economy, porters, cooks, guides earning a fraction of the advertised cost while absorbing the greatest physical risk. At midnight on summit day, lines of headlamps trace upward through freezing dust. Breathing falters, steps shorten, willpower replaces sensation. By dawn, some turn back dizzy and disoriented. Others reach the rim and collapse wordless beside the signboard. Around them, the air carries half the life it should. The gentle volcano exacts its own arithmetic. $2,500 pays for organization, not oxygen. 8. Mount Elbrus. Weather's wrath. The standard ascent of Mount Elbrus costs roughly $2,500 to $3,000. And for that sum, climbers receive cable car lifts, snowcat transport to nearly 5,000 meters, and the illusion that Europe's highest peak is a simple ski vacation. At 5,642 meters, Elbrus rises like a double-domed glacier above the Caucasus, a monument to misplaced confidence. Over 10,000 climbers arrive each summer, most with minimal alpine experience. Ease of access converts the mountain into a roulette table, one spin dependent on the weather. Its danger is as swift as it is impersonal. Warm currents from the Black Sea meet cold air streaming from the Arctic, forming rolling cap clouds that swallow the summit without notice. A sunny climb can become blindness in less than 15 minutes. The Russian Emergency Ministry catalogs more than 80 fatalities over 2 decades. Nearly all stem from exposure and deorientation rather than falls. Victims often perish within sight of safety, meters from snowcat tracks hidden beneath wind-loaded drifts. The September 2021 disaster remains the clearest forensic case. 19 climbers set out in marginal forecasts. By midday, wind exceeded 100 kilometers per hour, knocking some from their feet. Radios froze, goggles iced opaque, and the group fragmented on the saddle between Elbrus's twin summits. When rescuers reached them hours later, 5 were dead, 14 frostbitten, every survivor hypothermic. Their guide had attempted to hold position, believing the blizzard temporary. On Elbrus, delay equals death. Economic arithmetic fuels these tragedies. Operators advertise 2-day summit programs, using machines to shorten the climb and maximize turnover. Time lost to acclimatization means more customers per season, but weaker oxygen adaptation. Most clients arrive from ski resorts at 2,000 meters and ascend overnight to twice that height. Biologically reckless, but financially efficient. Human stories fill the pattern. In 2015, an experienced duo from St. Petersburg vanished after a successful summit photo. Search flights days later found their bivouac trench intact, food untouched, bodies still seated upright. They had waded through a storm expecting a break that never came. Such accounts repeat each year in smaller margins, tourists misjudging cloud speed, delaying descent by minutes, then freezing before realizing the outcome. Helicopter rescue is rare above 4,500 meters. Storms erase navigation markers and distort compass bearings. By minus 20 degrees Celsius, frostbite becomes irreversible within 15 minutes. Every search demands decisions about who can be retrieved before fuel runs out. Each recovery consumes thousands of dollars in resources, narrowing the region's fragile tourism profit. 7. Aconcagua. The stone sentinel's price. Climbing Aconcagua, the highest summit in South America, averages $5,000 per expedition. That figure covers park permits, mule transport, and tented camps across 3 distinct climate zones. At 6,961 meters, the stone sentinel lures mountaineers seeking altitude without technical climbing, promising success through endurance alone. Statistics appear forgiving, about 1 death per 1,400 attempts. Yet each season's fatalities expose the arithmetic beneath that promise. The killer here is meteorological rather than mechanical. The viento blanco, or white wind, moist Pacific air, forced over the Andes, condenses into supercooled micro-ice that blasts the upper slopes at 150 kilometers per hour. Skies remain clear, while a horizontal blizzard erases breath and vision. Wind chill drives temperature to minus 30 degrees Celsius. Barometers collapse within minutes. Veteran rangers describe tents lifting like paper. Climbers inside suffocate beneath their own shelters. Weather stations at Plaza de Mulas record each episode with precision. Pressure falls of 20 millibars, followed by snowfall, small in quantity but immense in force. During one such event in January 2015, 2 Europeans on the Polish glacier route faced gusts that shredded tent fabric and froze stove fuel. Their distress beacon pulsed for 36 hours before rescuers arrived. One survived frostbitten, the other died mid-crouch, crampons still latched. Medical summaries reveal consistency. Most victims succumb to hypoxia, edema, or cardiac stress, not falls. The long approach from the Horcones Valley climbs 3 vertical kilometers through desert dryness. Dehydration begins before altitude sickness registers. By 5,000 meters, oxygen saturation drops near 75%, reducing cognition precisely when wind decisions matter. The park hosts more than 4,000 visitors annually, quadruple the numbers of the 1980s. Commercial itineraries promise summits in 17 days, half the acclimatization period used by early expeditions. Each evacuation by helicopter costs the province upward of $8,000, consuming much of that revenue. Provincial rescue pilots describe operational margins as 1 battery charge wide. Individual stories humanize the balance sheet. In 2019, an American client, age 60, collapsed from pulmonary edema near Independence Shelter after declining descent. In 2020, a young Chilean photographer perished in thin fog, upright against stone with camera frozen in hand. His memory card provided the season's only detailed imagery of forming lenticular winds. Aconcagua kills slowly. Hypothermia and edema give time for realization, but not escape. Forensic climatologists studying weather telemetry phrase it clinically. Entropy increases with optimism. On the stone sentinel, optimism takes the form of speed, compressing time to save money while the mountain counts each omission. $5,000 secures logistics, food, and oxygen canisters waiting at camp. It cannot buy patience with weather or temperance before fatigue. By summit afternoon, those who press on face diminishing return. Half of recorded deaths occur descending. The equation repeats. Altitude multiplies minor errors until statistics appear inevitable. 6. Denali, the Great One's demand. Climbing Denali in Alaska costs around $12,000 per expedition. That fee buys a flight from Talkeetna onto the Kahiltna Glacier, 3 weeks of food and fuel, specialized cold weather gear, and the privilege of confronting the most unforgiving mountain in North America. Yet, no portion of that sum pays for assistance above base camp. Unlike Everest, there are no high-altitude Sherpa teams. Each member drags or carries every kilogram of survival himself. The money buys logistics, not labor. Denali rises 6,190 meters from tundra, barely above sea level, producing more vertical relief than Everest. At that latitude, air pressure at the summit equals conditions near 7,000 meters in the Himalaya, a physiological slight that transforms 6,000 meters into the severe equivalent of 23,000 feet. Temperatures plummet to minus 40 degrees Celsius, and clear skies can conceal jet stream winds scouring the upper ridges at over 120 kilometers per hour. Since the first recorded ascent in 1913, more than 130 climbers have died here, a fatality rate of roughly 3 per 1,000. The figure is low only because registration screens applicants. Denali itself never compromises. The Park Service defines its environment bluntly. There is no rescue beyond a weather window. Helicopters can rarely climb above 14,000 feet, and flight crews stand by for days awaiting visibility. Every storm stretches those delays. Every delay erodes core temperature. History marks turning points. The 1967 Wilcox expedition lost 7 men to storm exposure near 5,800 meters, its tragedy still referenced in ranger briefings. Later decades added avalanches on the Messner Couloir and crevasse entrapments on the lower Kahiltna. Rangers cite the Orient Express slide path, an innocuous snowshoot claiming more than 15 lives, as caution that small shortcuts become fatal accelerants. Medical data corroborate the physics. Nearly half of Denali deaths occurred during descent after successful summit, most from hypothermia or exhaustion. Core temperature at 35 degrees Celsius impairs decision judgment. At 33 degrees, shivering stops. Many victims are found seated, harness fastened as if resting. Carbon monoxide poisoning from stoves also reappears in reports. Tents sealed against wind become asphyxiation chambers. Teams establish 4 principal camps: 7,800, 11,000, 14,000, and 17,000 feet, ferrying loads between them in relay. Each haul weighs roughly 100 kilograms. Sled behind, pack on shoulders. Progress measured in meters, not miles. Climbers shovel snow caches, tag elevation, descend to sleep lower, then repeat. The process builds acclimatization and tests cooperation. On Denali, arguments over stove fuel have preceded frostbite. Fatigue makes tempers thin. The final ascent along the Autobahn, a 45-degree side hill beneath Denali Pass, defines judgment under deficit. Crampons clatter over hard blue ice while gusts threaten balance. Guides warn clients, no rest during descent, cooling equals death. Most fatalities cluster along this traverse, names now engraved on metal plaques at base camp. By the time climbers sink onto the glacier return flight, faces carved by frost and ultraviolet glare, they speak no superlatives, only precision. The price of entry was $12,000. The price of return was everything learned about limits. 5. Carstensz Pyramid, Remote Technical Challenge. A seat on an expedition to Carstensz Pyramid, also known as Puncak Jaya, costs between $15,000 and $20,000. That figure has little to do with altitude. At 4,884 meters, this is the world's lowest of the 7 summits. The premium buys access across one of the planet's most inaccessible regions, the cloud-forested peaks of West Papua, Indonesia. Helicopters replace mules. Permits require negotiation through tribal authority, government offices, and corporate security attached to the nearby Grasberg mine. Half the fee vanishes before any foot leaves the ground. The logistical pyramid begins at sea level humidity and ends in alpine sleet. Weather grounds aircraft for days. Porters vanish when tribal conflict rekindles. The alternate jungle trek, once an adventure in itself, now borders impossible: swamps, leeches, and sporadic insurgent blockades. Contemporary expeditions, therefore, rely on charter flight direct to the 4,200-meter plateau. The gamble is meteorological. In cloud, helicopters cannot hover safely, and delays multiply by hour, costing thousands per standby. Once landed, climbers face a gray blade of limestone jutting above endless fog. The route, roughly 5.6 on the Yosemite decimal scale, would register as moderate elsewhere, but here, every hole drips water. Early in the day, snow crusts the rock. By noon, torrential rain. Fixed steel cables traverse gaping voids. Tyrolean crossings suspended on soaked nylon 30 meters above glacier runoff. The obstacle is less technical than psychological, a combination of exposure, isolation, and noise of perpetual rain. Casualties are few yet telling. Insurance logs record several fatalities over 2 decades, mostly from falls or exposure awaiting evacuation. The March 2020 storm exemplified cumulative risk. 2 climbers swept from the upper ridge after ropes iced and anchors failed. Helicopters grounded 48 hours. By recovery window, both bodies were unrecoverable under avalanche-formed debris. The operators post-mortem attributed deaths to weather convergence and delay, a phrase capturing the core problem of extreme remoteness. Medical teams analyzing prior ascents note altitude stress disproportionate to height. Climbers airlifted from hot coastal towns to over 4,000 meters exhibit oxygen saturation dropping from 98 to 80% within hours. Without progressive acclimatization, dizziness and sharp headache emerge almost instantly. Combine that with incessant moisture-sucking warmth from skin, and the result is hypothermia at latitudes normally equatorial. Financially, the arithmetic is brutal. Each kilogram of cargo lifted into the highlands costs roughly $10 in aviation weight. A typical team hauls 700 kilograms, food, generators, climbing hardware, adding $7,000 to the bill before ascent begins. When storms stall departure, cost continues. Pilots paid to wait. Fuel expended for test lifts. Permits expiring mid-mission. budget overruns of 30% are routine. The 2020 accident prompted stricter safety protocols, double-anchored traverses, mandated satellite beacons, and daily radar updates from Timika. Yet, the underlying variable, weather density, remains ungovernable. Even world-class pilots fail within those clouds. Technically, Carstensz demands constant judgment rather than strength. Every slab pitch, every torrent crossing, redefines secure. Rope abrasion on wet limestone can part fibers unseen until tested under full weight. Experienced climbers describe the experience as vertical caving. The summit ridge, barely 2 meters wide, allows minutes for photography before fog closes. By expedition's end, survivors often cite the same reflection. They spent $15,000 to $20,000 not to climb higher than 5,000 meters, but to confront momentum itself, the inability to control time, rainfall, or bureaucracy. On Carstensz Pyramid, remoteness is both barrier and teacher. 4. Annapurna, the deadliest percentage. Climbing Annapurna costs between $35,000 and $50,000. That expense buys a chartered helicopter to base camp, up to 4 high-altitude camps laboriously stocked by Sherpa teams, and an atmosphere of calculation where every dollar equals hazard deferred, never erased. At 8,091 meters, 10th highest on Earth, Annapurna carries the highest fatality rate of all 14 8,000-meter peaks. 1 life lost for every 3 summits. Statistics gathered by the Himalayan database confirm 72 deaths against only 365 successful ascents. The mountain offers science's purest example of objective risk, a hidden formula of ice, slope angle, and weather that nullifies preparation. The south face rises nearly 3 vertical kilometers of overhanging seracs and brittle granite, a structure so steep it traps its own weather. Warm wind from the Bay of Bengal condenses into heavy snowfall that adheres briefly, then collapses without warning. Satellite radar reveals continuous micro-movement even under clear skies. Climbers call it the breathing wall. Glaciologists label it a living avalanche. There is no truly safe camp, only temporary coordinates spared by luck that season. This volatility has written much of modern mountaineering's obituary. In 1970, British climber Ian Clough was killed by falling ice just after triumphing on the same face. 27 years later, Anatoly Bukrev, who had rescued many during Everest's 1996 disaster, died in a sudden release of the south face serac. Witnesses recalled calm air seconds before impact. The lesson from both eras remains constant. Experience deflects almost nothing on Annapurna. Operators defend their $50,000 price through logistics. Helicopter drops move equipment past avalanche funnels. Satellite forecasts relay winds within tens of minutes. Lines fixed by Sherpas run from base to 7,000 meters. Yet those same workers absorb highest danger. Nepal's labor records list dozens of local fatalities tied directly to Annapurna operations. Fatalities rarely mentioned in client summations. The mountain taxes those beneath the headlines first. Avalanches account for more than half the deaths. Altitude illness, frostbite, and simple exhaustion compose the rest. The 2014 Hudhud cyclone magnified that truth, killing more than 40 people across the Massif, including trekkers far below climbing altitude. Barometric data recorded a 70 millibar plunge over 6 hours, equivalent to the approach of a tropical cyclone. Even satellite communications, those same technologies purchased with high fees, failed under snow static. Forensic tables derived from Himalayan Rescue Association archives show 62% of Annapurna fatalities occur during descent. Physical victory becomes neurological decay, judgment dulled by hypoxia, balance lost on steep ice traverses. Climbers who reach the summit at dusk often vanish in darkness within meters of success. Each rescue that succeeds costs more than $20,000 per helicopter sortie, far exceeding the Nepalese average annual wage. Despite all this, Annapurna endures as career measure. Since 1950, when Maurice Herzog and Louis Lachenal first summited with frostbitten hands, each subsequent ascent carries symbolic inheritance. Their climb inaugurated the era of 8,000-meter conquest. It also set a death-rate philosophy, achievement redeemed by loss. Herzog's own fingers, amputated after descent, became artifacts of commitment beyond price. Analysis reduces the myth to arithmetic. Each collective $1 million spent on attempts statistically accompanies 4 fatalities. Money added never shifts probability. Critics call it irrational persistence. Climbers call it meaning. For those who stand beneath that south face, the concept of cost becomes metaphysical, risk and reward indistinguishable at 8,000 meters. 3. Vinson Massif, Antarctica's monopoly. Scaling. Vinson Massif, the highest point in Antarctica, costs about $50,000 per climber. That amount purchases transportation from Punta Arenas in Chile to a private runway on the Rhone ice shelf, equipment rental, and a diet of pure logistics. There are no hotels, no local villages, only the monopoly of a single operator controlling access to the continent's interior. Here, profitability depends on perfection, because a single broken aircraft strut would trap every expedition for weeks. At 4,892 meters, Vinson lacks the drama of Himalayan altitude, but replaces it with cold, absolute enough to suspend breath mid-sentence. In December, Antarctic summer, air temperature at base camp averages minus 25 degrees Celsius. At high camp, minus 40 degrees is common. The sun never sets, bleaching sky and ground into the same blinding silver. Even calm air robs heat. Fingers freeze in 2 minutes of exposure. The price of participation, therefore, funds redundancy. 2 stoves per tent, triple fuel ratio, duplicate radios, 1 pilot commitment for immediate return flight. Mortality figures appear deceptively gentle. Only a few deaths in 6 decades of recorded climbing. The margin is misleading. Evacuation requires perfect weather spanning 1,300 kilometers of polar sky. 1 engine failure, 1 fog bank, and the equation inverts, survival probability collapsing from near certain to unknown. Supply routes average a single flight every 10 days. If the coast seals under wind, nothing enters or leaves. Climbers ration water sourced from melted snow, identical to surroundings, careful not to burn through the white ground they occupy. Economic structure defines ethics here. The controlling company repatriates every liter of waste, its cost embedded in ticket price. Environmental compliance adds roughly $5,000 per person, ensuring no pollution yet reinforcing exclusivity. Climbing Vinson is thus less sport than logistics exercise, a test of preparation where capital determines existence. Medical literature from U.S. Antarctic Program archives documents physiological strain distinct from altitude peers, constant light fragments circadian rhythm, dehydration climbs silently as exhaled moisture crystallizes, heart rate continues elevated even at rest, skin fissures from desiccation. Climbers call it the silent burn, energy spent merely to remain warm. Blood viscosity thickens, judgment slows under monotony. A dropped mitten can mean amputation. Incidents underscore dependence on machinery. In 2001, an inbound Twin Otter slid sideways on blue ice runway, fracturing landing gear yet stopping upright. No injuries, only delay, but cargo transport halted 9 days while engineers reinvented tools from spare tubing. In 2011, a stove explosion injured a solo Chilean climber. Emergency retrieval demanded satellite negotiation and a 6-hour precision flight costing 6 figures. Yet, the reward defies arithmetic. From Vinson's summit ridge, the curvature of Earth appears tangible, blue-black horizon arching beneath permanent noon. Few ever see that perspective. Climbers describe simultaneous awe and vertigo. The recognition of a world without perimeter. The $50,000 paid converts into silence so vast it erases ownership. 2. Mount Everest, the commercial death zone. Climbing Mount Everest costs between $70,000 and $100,000, depending on luxury tier. That sum buys oxygen, fixed ropes, tents pre-positioned by Sherpas, and a 6-week itinerary stitched with meteorological reports. It cannot buy safety above 8,000 meters, the altitude where the human body's decay begins faster than it can be reversed. Each breath loans oxygen from a dwindling account. Every extra minute is biological debt. The statistics define both attraction and danger. Over 600 summits occur most seasons. As of 2024, 340 climbers have died, roughly 1 for every 12 who tried, and a death rate of about 1.2% overall. The 2023 season marked one of the deadliest, 17 fatalities, many clustered along a single queue frozen at 8,700 meters. In video, their headlamps form a slow procession through the death zone, hundreds waiting their turn because a narrow path through the Hillary Step allows only one person at a time. Financial growth fuels congestion. Nepal issues more than 400 summit permits annually, each worth $11,000. Add local employment, porters, cooks, rope fixers, and Everest becomes a national economy on snow. Yet every paying client expands exposure. The trail above the South Col transforms into an aerial hallway of dependency. One line, one rhythm, one collective mistake away from collapse. Weather tolerance grows shorter each decade. Climate models show jet stream shifts, compressing viable summit windows into 5 days per year. When that window opens, hundreds move simultaneously. Bottlenecks form, exhaustion multiplies. In 2019 and 2023, oxygen shortages forced climbers to share regulators mid-ridge. Several sat down to rest, intending minutes, never rising again. They died upright, cords still clipped to the same rope linking the living. The anatomy of cost extends downward. For each client at the South Col, dozens of Sherpas make multiple carries through the Khumbu icefall, a shifting maze where seracs collapse hourly. Nearly 1/3 of Everest's total fatalities are Sherpa high-altitude workers. They earn roughly 5% of what clients pay, yet their labor forms the industry's invisible foundation. Insurance coverage for a fallen Sherpa remains under $15,000, less than the cost of one oxygen system. Forensics assign most Everest deaths not to accidents, but to timing errors. Decision thresholds collapse as cognition fades. Descents delayed by mere 30 minutes cross from margin to mortality. The Himalayan Rescue Association notes that 49% of fatal events occur after summiting. Blood oxygen measured in survivors drops to 60%, equivalent to unpressurized flight at 30,000 feet. In that state, even attaching a carabiner requires conscious repetition of forgotten motions. A second economy governs retrieval. Helicopters cannot safely hover above 7,800 meters. Below that altitude, each evacuation hour costs over $8,000. Bodies above the balcony usually remain frozen in place, becoming fixed landmarks for subsequent expeditions. The numbers balance differently on Everest. Everything expensive except compassion, which persists free of accounting. Every year, new marketing reframes the climb as achievable luxury, base camp Wi-Fi, chefs and media feeds, transmitting triumph outward. Underneath, Sherpa crews still thread ropes through crevasses at dawn. When fatalities mount, attention fades by next season. For the valleys below, each loss means another provider, absent through winter. $70,000 to $100,000 purchases infrastructure, prestige, and opportunity inside the world's most profitable death zone. None of it includes immunity from thin air mathematics. 1. K2, the Savage Mountain's ultimate price. Attempting K2 costs between $40,000 and $75,000, roughly the same as an Everest expedition. That money buys permits, logistics from Skardu into the Karakoram, oxygen stockpiles, and transport of over a ton of gear by porters and mules. It buys everything except leniency. At 8,611 meters, K2 is higher than logic, steeper than reason, and statistically lethal. Roughly 12% of those who reach its summit never return, a ratio unmatched among the 8,000-meter peaks, except Annapurna. The architecture of risk begins with the bottleneck couloir, a 60-meter funnel beneath a serac as large as a city block of ice. Every team must pass directly under it. The serac groans audibly, cracking as temperature shifts. Each minute beneath its shadow is a gamble with entropy. In 2008, the wager failed catastrophically. 11 climbers from multiple expeditions, nationals of 10 countries, died within 24 hours when each sheared from the ceiling and sliced the fixed ropes. Darkness fell, communication failed, orientation vanished in the thin void. Forensic reconstruction shows that the collapse severed cords exactly halfway down the couloir, stranding 24 people above 8,300 meters. Bottled oxygen dwindled, headlamps failed. They began descending unroped over blue ice at 45 degrees. One man, Gerard McDonnell, climbed upward again trying to assist others. He and several more were swept away by secondary falls. That night became the parable of high-altitude altruism, a reminder that compassion offers no survival advantage but defines human meaning nonetheless. Weather intensifies necessity. K2 stands farther north than Everest, drilled directly into the jet stream. Winds regularly exceed 150 kilometers per hour. Storms rise 4 times faster than forecast. Every summit window lasts hours, not days. Climbers wait weeks at base camp, watching barometers, rationing fuel and optimism until a 48-hour lull opens. When it does, dozens move simultaneously. The ascent from Camp 4 to summit involves a vertical gain of 1,300 meters, equivalent to climbing El Capitan at 2/3 oxygen pressure. Average summit day: 16 hours up, 8 down, in minus 40 degrees Celsius wind. Most deaths occur during descent. Exhaustion amplifies thin air delirium, and a misstep means kilometers of air below. Pakistan's permit fees are low, under $1,000 per climber, but logistical transport compensates. Porters must cross the Baltoro Glacier with slow-moving supply trains. Food spoiled becomes sunk cost. Helicopter rescue is possible only below 6,000 meters, weather permitting. Above, retrieval equals miracle. Despite this, attraction persists. K2's pure difficulty sustains its mythology. To summit remains to validate technique unassisted by infrastructure. In 2021, a Nepalese coalition achieved the first winter ascent, a feat once deemed impossible. But Pakistani climber Ali Saad Para died during the same window, reminding all that achievement here stays indivisible from morning. Over 800 recorded summits in 70 years yielded 96 fatalities. Updated ratios scarcely move decade to decade. K2's final instruction is economic elegance and brutality, constant cost, constant mortality, constant fascination. At dusk, climbers preparing under the bottleneck watch the serac glow red in twilight, hearing internal pops of ice like distant artillery. They check harnesses, clip into fixed line, and step beneath the ceiling of uncertainty. $40,000 to $75,000 has bought this moment. One traverse under gravity's loaded question. The savage mountain never bluffs. When it collects payment, it collects in full. Across all 10 mountains, price varies from $3,000 to $100,000, yet each receipt ends in the same ledger. Money buys logistics, shelter, and the illusion of control. It cannot buy mercy from physics. At 8,000 meters, the body deconstructs. At 4,000 meters, false security multiplies through numbers alone. From Mont Blanc's economy of volume to K2's theater of extremes, the dividend is identical, survival rented by the hour. The deeper cost belongs to those left waiting below. Each lost Sherpa, porter, or guide discounts a family economy. Each fallen visitor converts adventure tourism into grief supply chain. Combined fatalities across these peaks exceed 2,000 lives, an account still open. Yet climbers return because mountains symbolize proof of endurance, not immunity. Respect, not revenue, defines their odds.